It's my great pleasure to introduce our third speaker for this session. So I'd like to introduce Kris. Kris is Marketing Manager for MSD Animal Health in the Netherlands and obtained his master's degree in management at the Open University in the Netherlands. With his master's thesis on the relationship between employee satisfaction and customer satisfaction in Dutch veterinary practice, Kris opened a new value-added service on satisfaction provided by MSD Animal Health. Kris has a strong interest in relationship marketing and satisfaction in veterinary practice. So thank you, Kris, for joining us today. I'm going to hand over to Kris just now, if you're ready to start, and thank you.
Well, thanks for having me. My name is Kris van der Bogaard. I'm, as Rosie mentioned, a marketing manager for MSD Animal Health in the Netherlands. I'm Dutch, so sorry for my English. I hope everyone can understand me correctly, but for today's talk, I would like to briefly go over my master thesis, which I obtained a year ago, which was on in relationship marketing was titled with Do Happy Employees Make Happy Customers? I've been working with MSD for over 14 years, and yeah, I really wanted to do a research in the Dutch veterinarian practice. Next slide, please. Yeah, so for today's agenda, yeah, it's obvious how a master thesis looks like in terms of the agenda, but just to say, it's all about satisfaction today, and what I would really like to dive a little bit deeper into is the actual employee satisfaction in this case, and the relation that I'm seeking towards customer satisfaction, obviously. I have added a moderating effect in this case. It's called the communication type, which I will go into a little bit deeper in the next few slides. I'll talk about the research model that I've chosen. Of course, the execution, the data, results, etc. We'll come by that in the next coming slides. Thanks. Next slide, please. Yes. So as a research concept, yeah, so within relationship marketing, there's always a lot to do about satisfaction. And this connection that I put out, so between satisfied employees and satisfied customers, that connection has already been investigated in various studies. But that has not been done in the veterinarian sector yet. So it's already it's a known fact already for hotels, for restaurants, or in retail. But as I said, not yet in the veterinarian sector. So that's something that's actually really new. So the aim for this research is to demonstrate this connection for the veterinarian clinic. I have three variables, latent variables that I would love to talk about. That is employee and customer satisfaction and a communication type, as I mentioned. So to dive a little bit deeper in the actual meaning of these variables, yeah, and what connection they have with each other. Yeah, as I said, I'm from the Netherlands, so landscape for this research is actually the Dutch veterinarian practice, especially companion animals, which in the Netherlands we have about roughly 1,000 of, yeah, so to say. Next slide. Yeah, you can click. Well, you can do one more click, I think, Rosie. Yeah, thanks. So employee satisfaction. I would really love to do it on a higher level, because there's a lot to say. There's a lot of research that actually is already out there on employee and of course on customer satisfaction as well. But just as a general saying, employee satisfaction is being described as the evaluation of the general quality of a certain or recurrent job, as well as a fulfillment or satisfaction of the emotional state resulting from an employee's positive evaluation of work experience. So it has to do with, yeah, of course, the evaluation of in a certain type of your current job. So what it already, as I already mentioned, this equation has already been defined in other businesses. So what do satisfied and motivated employees actually do? They result in satisfied customers who are eventually willing to buy more, which is really interesting, and of course, really, yeah, a nice argument, of course, to work on those both satisfaction levels. And satisfied and motivated employees are likely to remain employed longer. So that's for a veterinary clinic as well, really important. Certainly in this time area, certainly in the Netherlands, where we really lack veterinarians at this stage. Next slide, please. So employee satisfaction to start with. So I'll put forward the model that I've placed in this thesis, but to start off on the left side of the model, I've put in employee satisfaction, ES. So to measure that, there's different ways to measure that, but we've chosen to do that via a survey in the vet practice. And to determine ES, you can make up several constructs to measure ES. For instance, the level of salary, the degree of satisfaction with your salary, or the opportunity you have for growth within your vet practice, the relationship you have with your manager, with your co-workers, and the amount or the opportunity of training that's being provided. What we as well did is that we've put out an overall satisfaction rate, asking on a scale to 1 to 10 how satisfied employees are with their job, just to put in an extra construct and an extra option to measure employee satisfaction. Next slide. Yeah, so we're now going to build the left side of the model. So you actually see a latent variable employee satisfaction that's being based upon 3 constructs. So relationship with management, the content of the job, and the relationship with co-workers. And as I mentioned, we as well put in an extra construct measuring the overall employee satisfaction, which basically gives you a number. These 3 constructs are being measured, are being questioned in the clinic via this survey that we've put out. It's already a validated survey from the SEHC, so satisfaction of employees in healthcare, which actually has already been made in the US. And this is a list of questions that are being answered on a 5-scale Likert. Next slide. So the second part is the right side of the model, which actually is customer satisfaction. And if you go over the literature, you actually read that it's one of the most being studied phenomena in marketing. So it's huge. Every company is working on customer satisfaction, but of course, veterinary clinics are as well working on customer satisfaction. So it's really an important one. So as a definition, it's mentioned that it comes from the evaluation that one may compare the implementation with the standard that they receive. And of course, it has a direct impact of the primary source of revenue for a company. So if people are not, customers are not satisfied, of course, it has a direct impact on the revenue of a company. Next slide. So how to measure customer satisfaction? There are several ways to measure that. Very simple ways, but also very complicated ways to measure. And as well, there is a lot of literature on it. You might know the NPS, the Net Promoter Score. It's one way to measure customer satisfaction, of course, but it simply is one question, asking a certain customer how likely it is that they will recommend a certain company, or in this case, the vet clinic. It's just a simple one question, and you cannot derive any, you can't make huge conclusions out of it. So no, that wasn't the best method, of course, in this study. So again, we conducted a survey, which is the best way to measure customer satisfaction. And in that case, we particularly made 3 constructs. Same as we did for the employee satisfaction. And in this case, we are measuring the customer expectation, so prior to a visit. And once that visit has been concluded, you have a perceived value and a perceived quality. These 3 constructs actually make up the latent variable customer satisfaction in this case. In this case as well, we asked for the overall, so for an overall satisfaction rate on a scale to 1 to 10. And what we as well build in this research is that we asked the pet owner in this case how they think that the employee satisfaction rate is. So we actually asked pet owners about it. So just in case the measurement or the surveys, the amount of surveys that we received from the employees wasn't sufficient. So we built in a little trick in this case. Next slide. Yeah, so this is the model on the right. So for customer satisfaction, these are all the connections to that latent variable and the constructs that I previously mentioned. As well, we used a validated survey for this one. It's an American Customer Satisfaction Index. We have a European version of it as well, but it basically translates this model into a variety of questions that answers these constructs and later on the latent variable. Next slide. In the overall research model, we added a moderating effect. A little typo, but we've added the communication type in the model. Because we really wanted to know if the communication type had any effect on that equation that I've just mentioned. So in a vet clinic, it's perhaps obvious that most of the times face-to-face or telephone communication is the most being used communication type. But new ways of communicating are as well through social media, through your website or email, chat, WhatsApp. But also a letter or a card. Now, and to determine which one is most important, or which one has the highest degree of richness, because face-to-face has a really high degree of richness. You get immediate feedback. You can pronounce. You have a variety in your language. You have a body language that you can use, which you can't use in a letter or a card. So. We determine the categories and degrees of richness with regards to these communication types. And yeah, just going over the literature with regards to communication type. When buying a product, a personal channel, so face-to-face is the most preferred one. And within marketing activities, please use cheaper ones or simple channels, for instance, social media. Next slide. So this is the total research model. So we've discussed employee satisfaction on the left and customer satisfaction on the right, and the communication type as a moderating effect. Actually having two hypotheses. The first one, employee satisfaction has a positive influence on customer satisfaction. And having said that, we think that this positive relationship will be strengthened most by face-to-face communication and least by communication through letter or card, which is perhaps quite obvious, but that was our pre-test, so to say. Next slide. Yeah, so to keep it simple, thanks. So to keep it simple, these are the three variables that we're testing. The why behind this research. This has never been done before or examined with primarily data. So it's always been done with or conducted with data from either customer satisfaction surveys or in different ways, but never has this been done with primarily obtained data, and nor has this been explored for the veterinarian sector. So this is quite new, so to say. Next slide. So what I did is after MSD gave their okay to reach out to 1,000 vet clinics in the Netherlands, they all were questioned to participate in this research. And once they gave their okay, I provided them with a survey via Get Feedback to spread among their employees, and I gave them another link in Get Feedback to spread among their pet owners. So they actually received two surveys, and all the data on the back end, I was able to see that everything that came in, and I was able to do analysis, and the vet clinic received a nice report from me, and they as well got a nice logo with their satisfaction rate, actually having a cat and a dog and a little heart in it. So they really loved participating in the beginning. Next slide. So after having actually registered 84 clinics participating in this research, eventually I ended up with 15 clinics actually spreading the both of the surveys. So between people actually participating and actually putting out the research, there was a huge gap. Lack of time, lack of people, lack of interest, a lot of reasons behind it, but I ended up with 50 clinics, which was quite okay, especially with the records I received from pet owners. So I ended up with, after data screening, etc., after the analysis, with over 1,000 records from pet owners. And unfortunately, the records from employees wasn't sufficient. So the 45 records wasn't sufficient to do all the analysis and to fill the whole model, with valid data. So I was lucky. I mentioned the trick we put in place. So asking pet owners about the satisfaction rate according to them on employee satisfaction, and that really helped filling out the whole model. Yes, next slide, please. So as a result, yeah, you can click on Rosie, thanks. Yeah, so after examining this total model on validity, on accuracy, on consistency, I've ended up proving that the first hypothesis was significantly positive. So I could support that hypothesis in social science. You actually support hypotheses. So the first one was actually established. So yes, employee satisfaction has a positive influence on customer satisfaction in the veterinarian clinic. And the second one, so the moderating effect wasn't supported. Next slide, please. So as a conclusion, so to say on a high level, yes, happy employees do make happy customers. So this is an actual confirmation of previous research, but it's now been extended and proven as well in the vet clinic. The overall satisfaction rate was quite high, with a grade of 8.29. The few remarkable things that came out of this study was that the customer expectations, so prior to their visit, were always higher than the perceived value they got in the vet clinic. So that was quite remarkable. Money always remains a discussion in the vet clinic. I think that will probably be the same in the UK. And perhaps obvious, but well known, face-to-face and telephone was the most used communication type in this case. Next slide. So as a recommendation, it's perhaps obvious, but it's good to say that follow-up research on a communication type are really advisable. So things are changing, social media is upcoming, so we really advise we would really advise to keep on asking about communication type and amending to the wishes of your customer. And you can click on, sorry, I have a few more, thank you. So conducting annual research on customer and employee satisfaction surveys is always recommendable to do that each and every year. And yeah, perhaps the most important thing is if you would like to increase your customer satisfaction, perhaps good to first start by investing in employee satisfaction. That's the most important remark I would like to make today, and which was the biggest conclusion I had from my research. Next slide. Yeah, so it's a vicious circle. So if the employee satisfaction rate decreases, it also leads to a decreasement in customer satisfaction, which then again furtherly decreases the employee satisfaction rate. So that basically is a vicious circle. I think that's my last slide. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Kris.
I hope well in time, Rosie. Sorry.
No, you were absolutely fine, Kris, because we'd started yours a little late. So thank you so much for that really fascinating talk. I think there's been a really interesting observation in the chat, which I would share, that it's so interesting to hear there is that link between customer and employee satisfaction. And I think a lot of us would have expected that, but I think a lot of us would have expected that moderating factor is, to have been in the opposite direction to what it was, that actually face-to-face communication would have been more important. And so it's really interesting to hear that, and it just shows how important it is to do some empirical work on this. So congratulations on a great study. Really good that you've been able to join us today to speak about it. So thank you.